17 News is your local election headquarters, and in tonight's top story, Bakersfield Congressman Kevin McCarthy last week announced his plans to resign as the representative of California's 20th Congressional District. Well, now the race to replace him is on. 17's Jenny Hutt joining us in studio with the latest. Jenny?
Jim, in short, there's a lot going on. Assemblyman Vince Fong of Bakersfield is attempting to run for the congressional seat, but there may be legal challenges to his candidacy. Unprecedented. That's the word being thrown around in the confusing aftermath left by Kevin McCarthy's announcement he plans to resign from Congress by the end of this month. Then the talk of the town was that State Senator Shannon Grove and Assemblymember Vince Fong would be viable replacements. But Grove stated over the weekend she will not run for Congress. Initially, Fong said the same. Just a few days later, and after making his re-election campaign for the assembly seat official, Fong threw his hat in the ring for District 20. But now he's in a bit of a legal conundrum. Here at the county level, Fong's candidacy for Congress is good to go. That's why you saw his social media post about taking the oath to run for Congress. But just as with any other 2024 race, the final certification is done by the Secretary of State, and that'll happen later this month. So Fong and all other 2024 candidates are on track to be on the March primary ballot. Nothing is set in stone quite yet. But what is set in stone is that Fong plans not only to run for re-election in his current seat as a 32nd District Assemblyman, but also to replace McCarthy in Congress. The Secretary of State's office says a candidate cannot run for two seats in the same election. The office also says if a candidate has already filed their declaration of candidacy, they cannot withdraw from that race. However, Fong appears to be undeterred. Again, he is a declared candidate for both the 20th Congressional District and the 32nd Assembly District, and will be pushing forward. Now, this could result in a potential showdown, between the Secretary of State's Elections Office and also the Kern County Elections Division come December 28th. That's the day the Secretary of State's office will be certifying 2024 candidates. And the ultimate lingering question, what happens if Fong were to win both races? And joining us now to answer some of those questions is Central Valley native and political commentator Tal Eslick. Eslick owns and operates Vista Consulting, a California-based public affairs and public relations firm. He has spent over a decade in California politics as the chief of staff in the California Assembly and Congress, and later as the director of California External Affairs at a large energy company. Tal, thanks for joining us all the way from Clovis.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So to start, overall, break down this confusion that we're dealing with. Assemblymember Vince Fong is intending to run for two seats in the same election.
Yeah, I think ultimately many folks assume that these things happen in smoke-filled rooms or that it's like an episode of The West Wing. It's probably more like that 30 minutes between last call and the bar closing. It's sort of chaotic. People look better than they actually are. It's big mess. And at the end of the day, despite the headaches, it'll probably work itself out. But yeah, the sequencing of some of these decisions has really sort of jammed a couple of the top tier candidates.
What is your understanding of the situation here, Tal? The timing of McCarthy's plans to resign makes all this quite messy. The declaration of candidacy deadline has now passed. So no one can run for Fong's assembly seat if he's elected to Congress. Is that the case?
My understanding from talking with a few attorneys over the last 48 hours is that it's probably helpful that Kern County's Registrar of Voters accepted Assemblyman Fong his paperwork to run for the congressional seat. Ultimately, this will likely be litigated. What happens to the assembly seat, I think, is probably even the most unprecedented part of this. But we'll see this play out over the next few weeks. I would say if we're handicapping it, despite the Secretary of State's comments, I would expect for them to attempt to defer to the local jurisdictions rather than come in and really heavy-handedly decide an election by withdrawing what is, I think, largely accepted as the top-tier candidate in Assemblyman Fong.
Do you have any information at all that about the heads up from Congressman McCarthy to Shannon Grove and Vince Fong and other political movers and shakers here in the county about his political intentions to resign? Or was there nothing? Did it just come out of left field?
I think they're Congressman McCarthy is a political animal, and as is Assemblyman Fogg, as is Senator Grove. At the end of the day, what folks may lose sight of is this job is service. I know that it appears that these congressional roles are very sought after, but the reality is someone's going to have to get on an airplane in Bakersfield and take an 8-hour flight twice a week for 25 to 40 weeks a year. It's not that great of a gig, and I think folks sometimes, when provided that opportunity, bring it home to their spouse or think about their families, and they reconsider, and that being done in a narrow timeline is what has sort of delivered us to this particular spot.
I want to touch a little more specifically on Assembly District 32. You were mentioning that kind of what might happen to that district is the unprecedented part of this. I mean, for the voters, are the voters left without representation? The Secretary of State, right before airtime, confirmed to us that no races can be reopened, even in special circumstances. So again, what happens to the voters? What are the greater implications of this?
My limited understanding of this, based on the handicapping done from the legal standpoint, is that the unprecedented nature could provide an opportunity for folks to find some creativity. In reality, as an unopposed candidate, there's no one who, other than the voters of that particular assembly district, there's no one who's directly impacted other than, in this case, Assemblyman Fong himself. So I think it's, again, unprecedented, and we might see something we've never seen before.
How likely is it we're going to see this political showdown between the Secretary of State and California Kern County's election division in court?
I think Kern County folks are used to being heads up with the state in a number of fronts, including the energy industry and everything else. So that probably won't be that unusual, but I think that's ultimately where this may stand with courts.
Wow, what a mess. Yeah. What a mess.
Right.
Tal Eslick, thanks for coming in all the way from Clovis again.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.